So they get into a little bit of a disagreement, and they have to figure out life. Avraham spends his time over there digging wells. He has his people dig wells, and the Philistines go and they stuff up. Sorry, the Philistines go and they get into a fight. They say that the wells belong to them. So who do the wells belong to? So we find an interesting verse in this week's Parsha. Text number 1, Baruch David.
Abraham took flocks and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and they both formed a covenant. And Abraham placed 7 ewe lambs by themselves. Abimelech said to Abraham, "What are these 7 ewe lambs that you have placed them by themselves?" He said, "For these 7 ewe lambs you shall take from my land, in order that it will be to me for a witness that I dug this well."
So Avraham gives these lambs to Abimelech for the purpose of being a witness, testimony that I, meaning Avraham, dug this well. Says the Zohar. An interesting little piece of Zohar. Text number 2, Shalom Herschel.
3 things exist as witnesses to serve as testimony. There are the well of Isaac, the lot, and the stone Joshua set up. From where do we derive the well of Isaac? From the verse, in order that it be to me for a witness that I dug this well.
Okay, so we're going to focus on the one that's relevant to today, and that is the first witness that the Zohar mentions, which that witness is the well of who? The well of?
Isaac.
The well of Isaac.
Isaac.
There's Isaac. No, that's what he says.
Of course, I'm sorry.
Well of
3
Isaac.
things. There are other things that exist as witnesses, like the moon and the sun with Moshe.
This is Zohar specific, certain things that exist. We have to know witness the testimony for what. Doesn't say either. What's the testimony for? But the first thing is, let's understand. The first thing is that the Zohar says the well of Isaac is a witness and it serves as testimony. So the question is, where do we know this from? Where do we know that the well of Isaac serves as a witness? What's the answer? The answer is because there is a verse that he quotes. The verse that he quotes is, in order that it be to me for a witness that I dug this well. Where does that verse come from? Does that verse sound familiar to anyone? In order that it be witness that I dug this well. Let's go back. Verse number 30. He said, who is he? Who said this? Avraham said this. For these 7 ewe lambs you shall take from my hand, in order that it to be to me for a witness that I dug this well. Quote, unquote, from Avraham Avinu. Avraham was the one who said this verse. And yet the Zohar quotes that the well of Isaac is a witness and brings as a proof a verse that Avraham said about digging wells. I'm sorry, that Avraham said about the witness of for his well that he dug. How are we to understand this Zohar? What is the Zohar talking about? It seems that the Zohar got something is off over here. Something is not right. Either it's the well of Avraham and quote the verse from Avraham, or it's the well of Yitzchak and quote a verse that has to do with Yitzchak digging wells. So the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, was known as a master Kabbalist, and the Rebbe's father was exiled by the communist regime of the former Soviet Union. And in exile, someone on his caliber doesn't worry about food. All they worry about is Torah, studying Torah, and more importantly, teaching Torah, sharing his wisdom, sharing his teachings. But you have no paper, and you have no pen, and you have no ink. So how do you do this? How do you share? So the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Chana, made ink from different herbs and leaves produced different color ink for her husband, and her husband had no spare paper, but he had a few svarim, a few books he had. So on the margins of the papers is where he wrote down all of his chidushim, all of his insights into the different sections of Torah. He had much, much more to write, but he simply had no space to write it. So when you write a lot and you have no space, you rely on the sources. So you quote from different sources. In other words, you say XYZ and look there for future reference, for further reference. But he didn't even have those books with him. So that was all done by heart. He was all quoting this by heart. So one of the insights that the Rebbe's father shares is on this piece of Zohar. And he says the following explanation. Robert, are you there?
Yes, I'm having some trouble with the video.
Okay,
Yeah.
you could read. Can you see the screen? Could you read text 3?
I can't see that.
Okay, so a little trouble. Okay, so Baruch David, take it away.
Why does the Zohar attribute the well to Isaac when, in fact, the verse speaks of Abraham? After Abraham's passing, the well in question was stuffed by the Philistines, and Isaac later redug this well. Thus, the Zohar attributes it to him. The above can be seen in the verse, and Isaac again dug the wells of water which they had done in the days of his father Abraham. And he gave them names like the names that his father had given them. See Torah or Discourse Toldot for more on this.
Okay. So Reb Levi Yitzchak says you have to understand what happened over. If you give a look further in the Chumash, we read how the similar story happened to Yitzchak and his wife Rivka. Yitzchak and his wife Rivka also go down to Philistine, and over there they encounter Avimelech, and over there Yitzchak digs wells. The same wells that his father dug, Yitzchak goes ahead and digs those wells as well. He redigs them, would be the better term, as the verse says later on in Bereshis, Chumash Bereshis, text number 7, Shalom. You're on mute.
Were stopped up by the Philistines, who filled them with earth.
So all the wells that his father's servants had dug in those days, the Philistines stuffed them up. So what did he have to do? What did Yitzchak? What did Yitzchak have to do? Yitzchak had to go and redig them. So that's exactly what Yitzchak does. As the pasuk says, Vayashav Yitzchak vayachber Peres, and Isaac again dug the wells of water that were dug in the days of his father Avram, which the Philistines had stopped up after Avram's death, and he gave them names like the names that his father had given them. So now we see a complete picture over here. Avraham dug wells in Plishtim. The Plishtim went after Avram died and stuffed up the wells. Years later, Yitzchak comes to Philistine, and Yitzchak redigs those wells and calls them names like his father gave them the name. Therefore, it explains the Rebbe's father. Now we can understand the Zohar. The Zohar calls it the well of Yitzchak. I could ask you, which well, what name should we give this well? Is it the name of Avram? Is it the well of Avram, or is it the well of Yitzchak? You can go either way because they both dug the same well. The Zohar chooses to call it the well of Yitzchak, and nevertheless, you can still quote a text, a verse from Avram that this well is going to be a testimony for this well, because it was the same well. It was actually Avram's well, and it was actually Yitzchak's well. So this gives us a little bit of simple perspective, but he says, see Torah or, to understand what's really taking place over here. Because we have to ask a more general question, which is, what are they doing digging wells? But what's up with the well digging? Number one. Number two is, even more important, I'm sure they did a lot of things in their life. Torah doesn't tell us about it. The fact that the Torah tells us that Avram dug wells, the fact that later that they stuffed it up and then later that Yitzchak redug them, seems to be that the Torah wants us to learn something from here that's very significant in our lives, something very important for the way we behave as Jews. So what is up with the well digging? So we have to see Torah Or and see what's happening over there. Let's take a look at Torah Or in this week's on Parshat told us. Baruch David, text 4.
Our sages tell us to behave in a manner that makes the name of heaven beloved. This means to make godliness more manifest in the world. This then is what inspired Abraham's hospitality. He would wine and dine pagans so that afterward he could teach them about God's greatness by instructing them to thank God and no one else for their food. This type of influence is known as a drawing down from above to below. Isaac, by contrast, was a well digger, representing a different type of influence, by which the very reality that previously concealed godliness is shown to be itself godly. A parable for this is a hole bored into apparently dry earth, but which, after digging, reveals itself to be filled with water. Now, Abraham also dug wells, but they were stuffed and did not last. It was none other than Isaac who dug them anew. He ensured that his father's flow would no longer be stopped.
All right. So what's going on over here? What's happening over here? What's happening? So we have like this. Let's understand first what's the idea of digging wells. So the idea of digging a well is simply that a well, when you look at the earth, all you see is earth, you don't see water. You dig into the earth, you excavate, and then you discover, and then you reveal that which lies beneath the earth, which this is symbolic of the service of Hashem, of Avram Avinu. Avram's life's mission was to reveal Hashem in the world. Where is God in the world? God was concealed. And Avram's mission was to dig, to excavate, and to reveal. Yitzchak also dug wells. Yitzchak was also involved in this service of Hashem. As a matter of fact, we're all well diggers. All of us are responsible to work, to dig deeper and deeper until we reveal that which lies beneath the surface. Sometimes shallow, sometimes very deep. So if Avram dug wells, why did Yitzchak dig the same well? If Avram revealed the Kedusha, if Avram revealed the holiness that was there, why did Yitzchak have to redig it? Or if it's important for us that we have to be well diggers, so it's important, just tell us that Avram dug wells. Why is it important to tell us that Yitzchak redug those wells as well? So the Torah Or is teaching us something very important. If all of our job is to dig wells, so what's the difference between me and you? What's the difference between Moshe digging wells and Bruce digging a well? And Shalom and Robert digging a well? What's the difference? So the answer is, when Moshe digs a well, Moshe has his own personality. Moshe has his own education. Moshe has his own background. Moshe has his own emotional traumas. He has his own emotional issues. He has his own emotional package. He has his own intellectual package. And when he goes ahead and does his work, he's taking his personality, all-encompassing personality, and investing it in the digging. And no two of us are the same. My being and my personality and what I bring to the table is different than what you bring to the table. So although the goal may be the same, when each of us do the work, it's actually being done slightly different because it's coming from a different perspective. This is simple. That's no great chidush. That's no great novel idea. That's basics, that we're all different. And when we're doing a job, even if we're doing what looks like the same job, it's still different. So now we have to understand, Avram was a unique personality and Yitzchak was a unique personality. What was Avram's personality? What was Yitzchak's personality? When Avram dug wells, what did that look like? What was that? So the Zohar and Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of the Rebbe's father over here, quoting from the Torah, or explains that Avraham was a lover. If you want to define Avraham, if you want to give definition to Avraham, so don't take it from me, but let's take it from Isaiah, from Yeshaya the prophet. What did he say? But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, who loved me, I've chosen you, and I did not despise you. So how does he describe Abraham? What's the description that he gives? The seed of Abraham who loved me. Abraham was a lover. That's who Abraham was. What about Yitzchak? What happened by Yitzchak? Later on the Chumash, says the verse, and Yaakov swore by the fear of his father Isaac. The description about Yitzchak is the fear of his father Yitzchak. Avram, who loved me, the fear of Yitzchak. What does this mean? Let's understand. Avraham was what's called Ahava. Avram was a passionate lover of God. Avram was a passionate lover of God, and therefore Avram was a passionate lover of people, and he wanted to share his passion of God with fellow man. And therefore, what mitzvah is Avram most famous for? Avram most famous for the mitzvah of achanasas, or inviting guests. What does it mean to invite guests into your home? It means you open your doors and you tell people, come into my space, eat from my food, drink from my drink, sit on my couch, eat at my table, enjoy. It's all about coming into my space because I love people and I want to share with people that which I have. Avram, his hospitality and Sarah's hospitality was legendary. If you went to the store and tasted a new flavor, talking about ice cream before, you tasted a new flavor ice cream, and you taste this ice cream and you're like, wow, something like this I've never ever tasted in my whole entire life. You love ice cream, and this is a flavor that's better than anyone you've ever tasted. You get excited about it. What do? You want to take it and share it with someone else that you care about. You want them also to have that excitement and that taste and that flavor. That's what Avram spent his life doing, by sharing with other people, by giving to other people that which he found so enjoyable and loving, namely Hashem Echad, that there's one God, and the connection that he can have with Hashem Echad, with one God. Avram was all about expansiveness, about sharing, about loving, about caring. In Kabbalah, this is called chesed. Avram was the epitome of the manifestation of chesed, of ahava, of love, which is the source of chesed, of kindness. In Avraham's perspective, in Avraham's world, there was no one that was not worthy enough of love. Everybody deserves love. Everybody needs love. So Avram shared his love with everybody. Avram shared his love with anyone that he came in contact with. In Kabbalah is explained that Avram was what would be the equivalent of the Niagara Falls of Hashem's manifestation in this world. Like flowing water that descends from the highest places down to the very lowest, so too Avram was a gush of godly love, of godly energy. And he gave it to even the lowest places. He gave it even to the people that seemingly were undeserving and did not merit such love. Avram gave it to them anyways. And therefore Avram is known for all eternity as a lover of God, the lover of God. That's all about Avram Avinu. Now, what about Yitzchak? How was Yitzchak's personality? What do we know about Yitzchak? What do we know about Yitzchak's life? The answer is not much. We really don't know about Yitzchak's life and what he spent his time doing. because Yitzchak was brought on as a sacrifice on by the Akedah. Yitzchak was someone who spent his life in Eretz Yisrael and Eretz Canaan. He never left Eretz Canaan. He was a holy, special Jew that worked on himself, on self-refinement, on self-connection with Hashem. Whereas Avram was all about expansion. Yitzchak was the introvert. Yitzchak was all about discipline. Yitzchak was about restraint. Yitzchak was gvura. Yitzchak was about yira, fear of God, fear of heaven. Yitzchak said, you only get what you deserve. And before I say that you deserve, you're really going to have to work for it. There's no free lunches when it comes to Yitzchak. Yitzchak didn't operate in that manner. Yitzchak also was passionate about God. Yitzchak also loved God. But his personality wasn't like that of his father's, where he went out and shared it with everybody. Yitzchak was all about working on the self, preserving the truth, working to become a better individual, a better Jew with a stronger connection to Hashem. But even though they're different personalities, one is Ava and one is Yira, nevertheless, they both dug wells. Avram dug a well, Yitzchak digs wells. Why are they digging wells? Because they both know that the service of Hashem, to serve Hashem, means to reveal Kedusha in this universe. There's only one difference. Avram's wells that he digs are stuffed up, and Yitzchak has to go and redig them. Why is Avraham's wells stuffed up? What did Avraham do wrong that Yitzchak got right? What happens with Avraham's wells that they need to be redug, and Yitzchak's wells are everlasting? They don't need to be redug because they were never stuffed up. What's wrong with Avraham's approach? What's wrong with love? The answer is that love is beautiful. Love is very beautiful. But love can also be misdirected. Love can also be abused. Love can also be hijacked. So what does it mean to love somebody? What does that even mean to love somebody? So the Rebbe of Kotsk, he once saw somebody. We shared this in Torah studies once or twice before. Something called fish love. Fish love means the Rebbe of Kotsk once walked over in a restaurant and he saw a Jew indulging in some fish, some delicious looking fish. So he turns to the guy and he says, "Why are you eating this fish?" The guy looks up and he says, "What do you mean, why am I eating this fish?" "Because I love fish. I'm eating fish because I love fish." To which the Rebbe of Kotsk says, if you loved fish, why did you kill the fish and then grill the fish? If you loved fish, you would have let the fish remain alive. You're not eating fish because you love fish. You're eating fish because you love yourself. And fish makes you feel good. Don't say you love fish. You love yourself. It's a selfish thing that you're doing. So you see, the word love can be abused. The word love can be misused. And reality is that most of the time we do abuse and misuse the word love. Because most of the time when we say the word love, we're referring to fish love. When it's all about ourselves. For example, if you ask somebody, a fiance, man and a woman, why are you interested in marrying this woman? Well, this woman makes me feel good, takes care of my physical needs, takes care of my emotional needs, takes care of my whatever other types of needs. So I want to marry her because I love her. But your love is all based on the needs that she takes care for you. You love yourself. And because this individual complements you, that's why you want to marry her. Your love is all dependent on how this individual is complimenting you and taking care of you. It's all about you. What about love for the other person? What do you actually love about the other person? Well, we pause. We have to think about that one. We're not sure. Well, the reality is that this is perhaps the reason why the state of relationships in 2021 is the worst that it's ever been, the most short-lived that it's ever been. People are breaking up way too quick at historical speeds. Why? It's all about love. Let's take Avram Avinu, for example. Avram was all about love. Avram shared love. Avram gave love. Avram was a passionate lover, a lover of Hashem. When you're inspired, when you feel really connected, it feels really good. It's really good to be a Jew. It's really good to be a descendant of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It makes me feel great. The problem is that love, instead of being God-focused, can very easily become self-centered and self-love. I worship God through what makes me feel good. Nothing to do with God, all to do with me. And we find this all the time in Judaism, where halacha, Jewish law, is put on the side for the sake of making Judaism feel better for the practitioners. Why are we putting aside halacha for the sake of making Judaism feel good? The source of this becomes love. I want to love, I want a connection with Hashem, but it's all about me. It's all about what does this exercise, this practice, this observance, how does it make me feel? Halacha is too limiting. I don't feel that buzz. I don't feel the high through the lens of halacha. Or if you would take, for example, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, the holidays, we've just finished the high holy days. There's moments in those holidays where a Jew is elevated, where I'm feeling a heightened spiritual connection. And that's great. That's the way it's supposed to be. The problem is what happens when the holidays are over. I'm no longer standing in the synagogue with a prayer book called a Machzor on Yom Kippur, with the ark open at Ne'ilah. I'm now in my home. I don't have the aura and the spirit and the heightened spiritual energy of the day before me. Now it's just a regular day. Now when it comes to serve Hashem, I can do a number of things and say that I'm doing this in order to serve Hashem. Things that make me feel good and say that I'm loving. This is from a love for God. When the truth is, it has nothing to do with God. Because love can be easily hijacked. Let's take, for example, people that are very outgoing and very social and very loving and always are giving love to people. Married person, married individual, invites people into the home, makes everybody feel great, talks with everybody. And because they are in love with people, so they share their physical love with everyone at the table. And one thing leads to another thing, and before you know it, due to the sense of love, because my whole relationship with my spouse is because my spouse makes me feel good and takes care of me, well, this other individual also makes me feel good. And sharing my love with them also makes me feel good. So it gets misdirected. The source of many problems, the source of the breakdown of the relationship. So what's the solution? Yitzchak gives a look and he sees Avram's wells. Avram, the father, the passionate lover, the one who shared love and gave love with everybody, even those that weren't worthy of love. The problem is that love got hijacked by the Philistines. The Philistines, representing Klippa, also have self-interest. And when the love of Hashem is no longer focused by Avram Avinu, because Avram Avinu passes away, now it's very easy to take that and get lost with the love. So let's read Yossi, text 9.
Philistines is from the phrase mavo mefulash, an alleyway open on both ends. This is why the sages state that the Philistine were scoffers. For scoffing comes from a heart that is inappropriately wide open from all sides. Inasmuch as Abraham's well-digging efforts represent a holy sense of love, pleasure, and godly joy in an expansive, abundant manner, it was susceptible to the Philistines coming along and stuffing it. This is because such holy expansiveness and openness gives room for a perverted iteration thereof. The expansiveness and free-willing attitude of those negative forces that obstruct all holiness.
So everything is okay as long as it makes me feel good and maybe one other person. And this, the truth of the matter is, sadly, this is somewhat the philosophy of today, of life today in America. As long as it makes me feel good, it's permitted. You can't hurt anybody else, but if there's consent, everything is permitted. This is a big problem. This is no way to serve Hashem. It comes from over-expansiveness of love without any borders, as we'll call it. Comes along Yitzchak, and Yitzchak sees that Avram's love has been hijacked. What used to be a love for Hashem that was given to anyone and everyone, even those that didn't work for it, has now been hijacked by the Philistines to translate into love for me. As long as it makes me feel good, no rules to the game. Yitzchak's service of Hashem is completely different. Yitzchak says, we're going to dig wells again. We're going to redig these wells. But now I'm digging the wells, not Avram. Now Yitzchak is digging the wells. Who was Yitzchak? Yitzchak is Yira. Yitzchak is Gevura. Yitzchak is restraint. Yitzchak is strength. Yitzchak is fear, respect, awe, reverence of Hashem. Yitzchak's way of revealing Kedusha in the world is through taking a step back, not through expansion, but through contraction, through introvertedness, through making the self smaller and making space for Hashem in my life, allowing God's will to be felt within me. Yitzchak is all about humility. Yitzchak is all about discipline. When Yitzchak digs the well, it looks completely different, much more measured approach. Yitzchak has very strict guidelines. his perspective is very, very narrow compared to Avram Avinu's. Yitzchak is a lover of Hashem too, but in a different way. Shalom, text 12.
We can now understand why Abraham's wells were stuffed by the Philistines, whereas when Isaac went ahead and redug them, they were no longer stuffed. When Abraham's approach of love and joy is paired with Isaac's efforts of humility, discipline, and restraint, it is no longer possible for any negative forces to feed off it. Thus, the wells lasted forever.
So Avram's wells didn't last forever, because love could be hijacked if it's not founded on Yira. If Ava is the foundation, if love is the foundation of a relationship, it's a very, very weak and shaky relationship. If Yira is the foundation, if respect is the foundation, if fear and reverence is the foundation, then the relationship is on strong ground and can last forever. So we now have, sorry?
Couldn't it be, they both, obviously they both have to be present, because without Abraham and his love, digging the wells in the first place, albeit they were stuffed and it was insufficient, we don't know what would have happened if Abraham had not dug wells and Yitzchak went out with just his restraint, discipline, etc., and dug wells. That wouldn't have been forever either. We don't know that. I mean, we don't have that sample to test it against, but
Good,
and also
good, valid point.
And one of the things, just Avraham, he certainly wasn't doing it just because it made him feel good. The love that we're describing that leads to problems. It was a pure and sincere love for God.
Avram's love, and the love which Avram shared with everybody, was a passionate love for Hashem.
Yeah.
Was a deep and holy love for Hashem. The problem wasn't Avram's love. The problem was that Avram's love only works as long as Avraham is there to guide it. The moment the guiding force is not there, then that energy, that powerful, loving energy, can be misused and hijacked. And it was by the Philistines. It's not that when Avram was alive, everything was perfect. When Avram was alive, the love was felt, the love was real, and Avram shared it with everybody. And people were inspired by it's like the Yom Kippur, the love and the connection you're feeling on Yom Kippur or in Rosh Hashanah or at a moment of truth in your life. But when that space, when that person, place, or thing is no longer present, then the love, that energy, that powerful energy, can become a self-serving and self-fulfilling love. That's what happened by Avram. Yitzchak goes and redigs the well. So now we understand something important when it comes to our interpersonal relationships. What is the most important ingredient to a marriage? What is the most important ingredient to a relationship? The answer that everyone says, of course, is love. And this is incorrect. The most important ingredient in every relationship is respect. Without respect, your love is not going to go too far. And we find something very interesting. Yitzchak, gevura, strength. What's the sign of true strength? What does the Mishnah say? Eizehu gibor. Who is strong? Who is called a strong person? Anyone know what the Mishnah says?
One who can control himself.
One who controls, one who conquers his inclination. What's the pshat? What's the explanation? One who controls himself or herself, one who conquers their inclination, that's considered to be the strong person. And the answer is yes. It takes more strength not to do something that you want to do than it does to do something that you want to do. When you're feeling the urge to yell and to shout at someone because they made you angry, and you can really have good reason, and you can really explode at them, it's easier to do that than it is to say, no, I'm not going to yell. I'm going to speak calmly now. It's easier to throw your hardest punch and land it than it is to hold yourself back from throwing that punch that you want to give. Gevura, strength, true strength is the power of restraint. Self-restraint is the greatest expression of our strength. So now let's take a simple example. A husband and wife are married. What's the greatest expression of the love and the connection between the husband and the wife? Well, let's take a simple expression. Buying a gift. Buying a gift is definitely a good expression of connection and love. What does it take to buy a present for somebody? What does it take to buy a gift?
Knowing them.
Now, what does it take from you? You
Oh,
want to buy a present.
Give
Now,
of yourself. You have to
what?
give of
No.
money.
What? Money. All this is money. A gift is money. There could be a more expensive gift or a less expensive gift. It's just a matter of how much money the gift costs. But that's all the gift is. I'm buying you something. I'm giving you something. That's what a gift is. Some gifts have sentimental value to them, but also its value is limited compared to when I tell my spouse, when I tell someone who I love, I really want to go hang out with my friends tonight. I want to go out when they're going out to party, they're going out to eat, they're going out wherever they're going. But my partner tells me, I really need you home tonight. I really need you here. I need your help here. I really don't want you to go. I'm pulled. Now I'm torn. Now I'm two people who I care about. My wife tells me she needs me here. My friends tell me they need me over there. When I say no to my friends because of my wife, that takes much more of me than buying a present. And you know what the proof is? The proof is that so many men turn to their wife and say, if you just let me go, I'll buy you a present. That's what they say. Please let me go out now and party with my friends, and I'll make it worth it for you. I'll make it worth it for you. This happens all the time. We say this this language is used all the time. When I want to do something that you don't want me to do, I try to find all the reasons to get you to let me do it. What does it mean? That means that the most difficult thing for me to do is say no to outside because of you. That's the foundation of a lasting relationship. I respect you, and therefore I say no to everybody else. Which answers a very fascinating question. On Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year, at Mincha, the final Torah reading of Yom Kippur, what do we read about on Yom Kippur? At Mincha time, one would think maybe the Shema Yisrael, maybe the Ten Commandments, something, appropriate for the heightened godly spirit of the day, the angelic spirit of the day. And yet, what do we read about?
Forbidden relations.
All about the forbidden relations. Where does it come to read about these things on Yom Kippur? It seems to be misplaced. Someone got it wrong over here. Some rabbi somewhere back 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, got this whole thing wrong. This is the middle of the day on Yom Kippur. Everyone just in shul. This is not the subject that we should be dealing with now. But based on what we learned today, we have the answer to the question. Our deepest connection with Hashem is expressed by the things that we say no to because of our connection with Hashem. Those things that I want to do, they are enticing to me. They make me feel good. I love those things. Those are the things that I love and I'm passionate about them. But I say no to them. Why? Because of God. That is the ultimate expression of our connection with Hashem. There's nothing better to read about on Yom Kippur than that. The most down-to-earth, practical passions of the human being that we reject only because that Hashem told us to. What emerges from this is that in our relationship with Hashem, we have 613 mitzvahs, 248 positive, 365 prohibitions. Which one? Observing which kind of mitzvah is a greater expression of our connection with Hashem? The answer is the prohibitions. When we don't transgress a prohibition, we are expressing a deeper connection with God than by putting on tefillin or by keeping Shabbos or by keeping kosher. Because those are things that we do for God. It's the things that we don't do, the conquering of the inclination, where the real strength is expressed, where the real metal is tested. That's what Yitzchak teaches us. And now we can understand the Zohar beautifully. What does the Zohar say, our original piece of Zohar? Our original piece of Zohar said there are three things that serve as witness. And one of them is the well of Yitzchak, but he quotes a verse from Avraham. Because Shalom pointed out something interesting. We don't know what happened if Yitzchak would have dug a well by himself without Avraham's influence beforehand. But what we do know is the Torah tells us a recipe for success over here. If you want something to be a witness, something to be everlasting, something should last forever, here's how it works. It works like this. It has to be foundation, Yitzchak, structure, Avraham. It has to be a combination of the two, but not a blend of the two, a combination of the two, one following the other. The ultimate is there should be love. The ultimate is there should be a great love, a passion, a feel good. We should really want, desire to have a deeper and deeper connection with Hashem. We should be passionate about these things. This should be our greatest passion in life. But if it's only about feeling good and living our passion, we have to be careful. If we're not holding on a high madrega, if we're not holding on a high level, or we don't have a guide to keep us in check, we may go off the beaten path. We may end up in a place we never intended to go. But if we have the foundation of respect for Hashem, which is it's not about me, it's about making space for Hashem in my life. That's the foundation. That's the Yira. Then that Yira itself, that awe, that reverence of Hashem itself is what then keeps the love in check. It keeps the love to be focused one way, a one-way street between me, the Jew, and Hashem, my God. Without Yitzchak, the love can go away. Without Avraham, if it's only Yitzchak, well, then we're missing that fundamental love that's necessary to keep a relationship. You need to have love in a relationship. It's just that the love can't be the foundation of the relationship. Respect foundation, love growing out of the respect. We learn this from Avraham and Yitzchak, which is why we don't talk about it in this week's Parsha, which is why Yaakov is considered and called Tiferes, beauty, because Yaakov was the perfect blend between Avraham and Yitzchak. Avraham had a combination of his father and his grandfather in him. Whereas Avraham is chesed, Yitzchak is gvura, Yaakov is Tiferes. It's not relevant here because we're not discussing Avraham. Our point over here is to discuss that Zohar, which teaches us that we call it the well of Yitzchak because without Yitzchak it would never be everlasting. You can't mention a well being an everlasting testimony without calling it the well of Yitzchak. That's the only way it goes past one generation. But at the same time, if we want to quote a verse about what this well represents, well, its representation, its expression is all about the Abrahamic love, that deep, passionate expansiveness, sharing and caring and providing for my fellow as an offshoot of my deep connection, loving connection, passionate connection with Hashem. All right, anyone have any questions today?
Yeah.
Go.
So a couple. First, it could have, the answer is in fact that that's that